Hello there. So I'm speaking on camera again, and I already regret it. Anyway, the purpose of me speaking today is I'm here to give a guitar lesson on a bit of riff writing, if you will, or songwriting. In this case, I'm talking about power chords, and really not so much their uses, but actually the disadvantages to using power chords. Now, power chords are a ubiquitous part of heavy music, and you can find them in most heavy songs that involve a distorted guitar. You really don't need to know a lot to use them. They are very easy and simple to remember, as you only really need to know two shapes particularly, which is the standard bar chord shape, which you'd use if you're in a standard tuning, and if you're in a drop tuning like I am today, you can play it with just one finger over the top three strings. Like I said, they're easy, fun to use, and very accessible. You can write riffs like this, for example. So, with this in mind, what are the downsides to using power chords? Now, to explain the downside, I do need to use a little bit of theory, but not a great deal. So, when we build chords, typically the standard chords, we use three different notes to build them, in the case of a major chord or a minor chord. So I'm going to be playing, just for reference guys, I am tuned to drop D flat, but I will be using the chord names as though as in drop D. So I'm going to just make a A minor chord, which I'd use by making a an E, and a C. So we've got a root, perfect fifth, minor third. So when I play all that at once, we get this. Now, if I wanted to play a major chord, I'd take the A and the fifth and keep them, and I'd just add in a C sharp, which is a sharpened version of the last note I used to make the A minor, which is the major third. Now, when you build a power chord, however, you don't include the third note. Instead, you just play these first two, which is your root and fifth. Which, like I said, it sounds great distorted. However, notice how the first two chords had a distinct personality between the two of them and distinct sound. Whereas the power chord, it wasn't really major or minor, was it? It was just somewhere in the middle. That's because we're not including the third note, which actually gives the two previous chords their distinct flavour and personality. Now, this can be a problem because, unfortunately, with the power chord being neutral, it can mean it lacks kind of, I guess you could say, expression. It doesn't really have a colour to it. And while sometimes that's well and good and fine, and to some players this isn't really an issue, I find that at times I might be playing and I might want a chord to stand out a little more, maybe, bring emphasis to that particular section, but the power chord doesn't accommodate it because of its lack of tonality. Now, another downside of a power chord as well that is afforded by only having two notes is it doesn't have a lot of connectivity with other chords. Usually when we write chord progressions, a lot of guitar players I know like to have, if you like, shared notes between the chords they're using, like notes in common. Now, because the power chord unfortunately has two notes, it really limits the options you can use there. And so not only is it a neutral chord, but it's actually a little bit antisocial. It doesn't play nicely with others. Now, don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean you can't play other chords with it that don't share notes, but it does kind of limit your options there if you are wanting to have shared notes in the chords. So, how do we fix this? How do we make this better? Well, the simple answer is add extra notes to your power chords. You can tell I don't speak very often on camera. Anyway, when it comes to adding extra notes, you might think, well, that's obvious. I could have figured that out. Why did you need to tell me that? I think really it's something that it's kind of hidden in plain sight, and maybe if you didn't give it much thought, you might not have considered it. And the other thing that's kind of a problem with it sometimes, or at least I've found when I've spoken to some other players, is they just don't really know how to, I suppose, practically add these notes in, or understand the concept of what they're doing there. So I'm going to give a handful of examples where you can add additional notes into a power chord, and then I'm going to play two progressions, one of them where I'm just using the power chords, and then the other where I'm going to use some of these alternative shapes I'm going to show you just to showcase the difference in sound and what I'm trying to get at in the point of this video. So let's get on to these shapes. Now, usually when we want to add extra notes into a power chord, I find that the easiest way of doing it and most practical is to take out the octave of the root note. Because usually when we play a power chord, although it is two different notes, we do have a third note in there, which is an octave of the root note. That note there, yeah? So since we've already got that note, well, it surely can't hurt to substitute it out, right? Get it? So, first of all, I'm going to play on the 7th fret here. With the play shape, this time I'm going to take that octave note and move it a tone higher. So for the frets that I'm going to be using, I'll be using 7 on the low string, 7 on our E string, and then 9 on our D string here. So what we get when we do that is this, which is a suspended second. Now it kind of has a minor tonality of its own. It's kind of very good at bridging into other chords. Like I said, it's a fun shape, pretty easy to make as well. You don't really have to do a lot to create the shape, but it's definitely quite practical, and I think it's probably the most commonly used ones in drop tune guitar. If you listen out for it, it is there. There's quite a few riffs to include it. Now, another thing we can do, same vein of logic, but this time instead of playing this 9th fret of the chord I was using, on the 7th, we could play the 10th fret. So what we get is this, which that is actually just a minor chord. What we've done is we've actually added in the minor third that we were previously not including, which gives it that very minor and kind of dramatic tone. Now, another thing we can do, and this is drop tuning exclusive, I'd say, although I guess you could maybe do it in standard if you found a way around it, is when we're playing a drop tuning, we can include extra octaves of the root note and fifth by adding in the G string and B string, like this. So what I did there is I played the 9th fret, the G, 10th fret, the B. However, we can modify and alter that shape as well to include additional notes. So, taking the octave that's on the B string here, if we were to flatten that, so just move it down 1 fret, we get this, which is a major 7th. Now that one you will hear a lot, and if you listen out for it there, it's definitely quite a dramatic sound, and you can use it in like minor tonalities to really expand on it, like kind of like this, I guess you could say. Like I said, it's really good chord. It's very big sounding. I mean, I think one of the most obvious examples of its use is if you listen to Deftones, they include it a lot. And you could also hear it in some Breaking Benjamin riffs, they do it quite a bit. And those are just a few of them, there's lots more than just that. Now, another thing you can do with that same shape is if you wanted to, you could also move it down 2 frets to include what would be the minor 7th. Which, like I said, it's a fantastic chord. If you really want to, you could even include the minor third in that same shape. So, just put it there so you can see it. Very dramatic, very big. Also one of my favourites, though. It's a bit harder to make than some of the other shapes because it takes multiple fingers. But if you can make it, it's definitely a good chord to use. Now, as well as that, if you want to, and for standard shape chords, the easiest one to probably do in standard shape is the major 7th that you can do in a standard shape, which is where you take the take a power chord like I've got here, these 3 strings, but then we add in the major 5th, major 7th, which sounds like that. It's another version of that chord I previously stated using all strings, but you're just using the standard shape. Unfortunately, I will say the standard shape power chords are a little bit less accommodating to adding additional notes. Now, there are other examples of chords I could show you, but I think honestly a lot of them can be found by just experimentation. Either you just take some of the shapes I've shown you and add more strings in, like, you know, and you can get a lot of different sounds that way. It's just experimentation. So now for the example. So I'm going to play, like I said, a quick chord progression, and I'm going to then play another chord progression but use the alternate shapes, just so you can kind of hear the difference. So for this example, I'm going to play myself an A, F, C, a G, and then I'll do it round again but end on a D. So all together, this is what that would sound like. Like I said, doesn't sound bad, but it is a bit middle of the road, isn't it? So now I'm going to use some of those extended shapes I spoke about. I'm going to start with the minor 7th, minor 3rd. I'm going to add in the major 7th, the suspended 2nd, and I'll do the same here. And then for the D, I'm going to add in another chord, which is actually a D minor 9, which you get by playing the 5th fret of G and the 7th fret of your B with the open string. But, open strings, you do need to include to have the full chord, but you can kind of take it or leave it, to be honest. And obviously you're going to be playing these top 3 as well. So, let's see how that sounds all together. Now, as you can hear, that's a lot more dramatic sounding. It definitely has a bigger sound to it, and to me it sounds a lot more full because there's more chords, there's more notes, there's more connectivity. Now, you don't have to take these suggestions to heart. If you're content with just using power chords and that's all you need to achieve the sound you'd like, then stick with that. But this is definitely an alternative suggestion as something that you might want to try if you want to try something just a little bit different. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed today's lesson, and I'll probably do another one sometime in the future. Till then, see you later.